Musicians Talk Show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle makes it easy to build a stunning website for your music in minutes. Choose from hundreds of mobile-friendly themes, then customize your design and content in a few clicks with Bandzoogle's easy visual editor. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in, including tools to sell your music and merch commission-free right on your website, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, integrations to pull in content from all your online services like Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Bandzoogle plans start at just $8.29 a month and include your own free custom domain name. So go to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days, and be sure to use the promo code TMTS to get 15% off your first year of your subscription. Okay, before we get started, Matt and I have lots of great ideas to improve the podcast, but we can't do it without you. So if you want to help us grow, click support the show at musicianstalkshow.com and consider signing up for our Patreon. We have tons of great perks and rewards for you, such as early guest reveals, a weekly live Q&A, and access to a monthly exclusive episode only for our patrons.
Sign up for our mailing list on our website to gain access to our private community on Discord. There you can communicate with Dallas and I directly about all things TMTS. You can also follow at Musicians Talk Show on Instagram to discover new episodes, vote in polls, and join the conversation.
Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. It's episode 51 of the Musicians Talk Show. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Dallas DeWhite.
And I'm Matt Tolley.
And how are you guys doing today?
Hopefully better real soon after you listen to this podcast.
Yeah, man. Who do we have today?
We got Andy Wood.
Andy Wood. I don't even know how to describe it. Shredder, bluegrass guy, fusion guy, rock, metal. I mean,
yeah, I like the fact that he's got a soul and he really talks about art like he's a creative energy, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, we dive right into all the good stuff. I'm talking creativity, art, like you just said, Matt.
Yeah.
Inspiration, winning the Guitar Center tournament.
Yeah,
I mean, playing with one of our amazing podcast friends, Harry Myrie, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So let's get right into it.
Had a show last night, and kind of moving in a little slow motion today, but
that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Where
That is how it goes.
Where are you located in the world? Where do you live?
I'm in East Tennessee. Obviously, I work out of Nashville quite a bit, but home base is a little further east.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we're from the South too. I mean, we're in Charlotte, so.
Oh yeah, I'm in Knoxville. Then, if you're that close.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Knoxville. My grandparents lived in Knoxville for a long time. I've been up there many times.
Right on, dude.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
I played Charlotte a ton a few years back. I used to play there all the time.
Yeah,
I
dude.
just played the Evening Muse not too long ago.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah, that's right in our neighborhood, man.
And that's a cool little room because you could put 60, 70 people in there that really love music and really love guitar, and like it creates a cool vibe.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, you guys are both players, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
both of you guys play. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah, it's cool you're in Charlotte all the time. We'll have to connect next time you're here.
Definitely.
Heck yeah, dude.
So the first question I ask pretty much everyone is, how'd you get started in music? What's kind of your backstory?
My granddad got me started when I was around 5 on bluegrass. My cousin and I, we were both only children, so we grew up like brothers, same age and everything. And we call him Grampsy. Grampsy just always had fiddles and mandolins and acoustics and kind of just never quit playing.
Cool.
That's awesome. What were some of those like early influences you had? Like what kind of made you want to, get going?
I didn't start playing electric guitar until I was like 17
Oh,
or
okay.
18. So all of my stuff is going to be a little more mandolin centric, at least from that age to 18. But as far as a 2-part answer, the earliest influences were Sam Bush, Newgrass Revival, Tony Rice, Bela Fleck, Flat and Scruggs, Bill Monroe, just, the industry standard Bluegrass 101, Mark O'Connor records. And so first got into electric guitar via a Mark O'Connor record. It was called the New Nashville Cats. There was a ripping solo on a song called Pick It Apart, and I looked it up, and there's a guy named Brent Mason who is, went on to be my favorite guitar player ever. And that's when I was like, I need a Telecaster.
Yeah, nice. So we were, like I said before we got started here, we were listening to Junktown for the past hour or so, and man, I hear a lot of my own influences in your playing too. So I got to ask, are you a Greg Howe fan, Steve Vai, Paul Gilbert, those guys?
I mean, I think every guitar player is. That's kind of like, so those are like the dudes that sit at the round table. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like everybody at some point's been like, yeah, man, I got to learn that one Steve Vai lick. Even if you're not like a mega Steve Vai fan, it's like he's so influential, man. And Greg Howe, it's like I never sat and learned a lot of Greg's stuff, but I got it secondhand from other guys that learned from. You know what I mean? It's like those are like in the guitar game. It's just those are just. Like it's, you know, like I said, it's like that round table thing where it's like everybody is influenced somehow, some way. You know, the Greg Howe record that really influenced me was the Extraction thing he did with Dennis Chambers. And it's really killer.
Amazing. My favorite song is Tease off that, man. That song is so good.
And there was another record he did that had a cover of the Shaka Khan song, Tell Me Something Good.
Yep.
And I love that record. I thought it was cool.
I think that one was called Soundproof.
I think you're right. And it had the guy that called in and, you know, the answering machine thing. I thought that was cool.
That was a cool theme throughout. Yeah.
With Vi, I actually really love a lot of the earlier Vi stuff. I mean, obviously Vi is always great, but I was actually listening to the Whitesnake Slip of the Tongue record.
Oh, today. Nice.
And it's like, you know, those are those moments where I love to hear Vi play in a band and play for a singer.
Oh, for sure.
That's a cool thing. And, you know, I remember one of the things I remember beating myself up over was, Jack Butler's Duel at the end of Crossroads, you know, and this is like, I was a cusp kid. So, you know, YouTube wasn't a thing and it took forever to download an MP3. It's like, so I remember learning that like with the hard way, you know, without having the access to the internet, which has really changed the game, you know, as far as educating yourself. And yeah, who else did you say? Paul Gilbert, man, I just got to play a show with Paul Gilbert and
I saw that on your Instagram.
It was the craziest thing ever. Like to be on stage and look over and be like, that's Paul Gilbert.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it was cool. Fun. Like he did his set and then he calls us all on stage. It was me and Mark Letary and Andy Timmons, and Andy's a major hero of mine. And Mark is a fabulous, fabulous player in his own right.
Yeah. Mark's amazing.
Legend. So like the first thing he did is Paul's like, Andy Wood, I realized we've never played music together. We should meet each other. And we did like licks back and forth. And he goes, Mark Letary. And it's just Paul has that charisma.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does.
He can just command an audience and he has that vibe. So, you know, yeah, obviously, you know, you can go on forever about legends like that. There's a preface there, but there's some friend of Eric's is a friend of mine, and he owns the 68 Plexi and a vintage Strat that I think Eric used on maybe Venus Isle or something. And he brought that into my studio and we tracked back to Austin on the gear that Eric used. And there was a little handwritten note with the tubes in the order that Eric liked them and all that stuff. It was really,
that's awesome.
That is
one of those like what is real life moments.
Totally. Yeah.
And doing a direct homage like that's always tricky because, you know, I kind of assumed it was inevitable at some point for somebody to play that song for Eric, whether it be my friend or you know, somehow. But it's like I would just want him to hear it and be like, you know what, man, cool. And you know, it's like you never want to think that you're doing something that could be misconstrued as disrespectful or anything like that. You definitely want to always be as proper as possible. And you know, that was a really fun tune. And we only had one day with the amp and the guitar, you know, so I had to do it right once, you know. So that's one of my favorite tunes on the record. And when you talk about influences, that's a major one. And obviously there's several songs that have a very on the nose Brent Mason influence. I mean, he's my favorite guitar player, so there's plenty of that in there too. So
yeah, that's awesome. Definitely. It's interesting talking about Paul Gilbert. The evolution he's gone through, I mean, since he came onto the scene it's so drastic. I mean, he changes, it seems, pretty drastically every couple years, you know.
I mean, he was a kid when he came on the scene. I think he did that REH video when he's like 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And just outplaying the world. Yeah. And, you know, now he's really aged gracefully in the guitar music scene because sometimes, you know, guys hang on to where they were 30 years ago and image wise or clothing wise or vibe wise or just regurgitating the same album. And it's like, man, I don't really want to hear that. Like I love Paul because you get a new record. You don't really know it's going to be on there.
Yeah. He'll just start singing about crocodiles. You're like, what?
And I love that. It's really cool. I think that is, you know, there's all of my heroes tend to have that in common.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Jeff Beck fan. And when he releases a new record, you kind of don't know what it's going to do to you, and you don't know what kind of record it is. And he's also, you know, freaking 70 however years old, 75, 76. And I think Emotion Commotion, which is like not the newest record, but the one right before it, he made that record when he was like 70 or late 60s. And it's like my favorite record he ever did. I like it more than Blow by Blow and all that stuff.
Yeah, still kicking ass. So
yeah,
cool,
I mean,
so
like,
cool.
how do you do that? You know, somebody said to me, I had a recently deceased relationship, and one of the things she said is, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, what do you mean retire?
Yeah, that's not a thing. Yeah, not for musicians.
What is that?
You mean when I'm in the grave?
Yeah, I was like, I guess I'll be dead.
Yeah, it's funny. We were kind of talking about that just before we called you. We were talking about AC/DC. And, well, it started because we were talking about the rumors of the new Guns N' Roses that might be dropping.
Right.
And that spun into AC/DC and how I mean, as much as we love AC/DC, they kind of put out the same stuff every, couple years.
Right.
So it's like,
and you get like one good song per new record.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So,
well, there's a great interview, and I hope you can find it on YouTube. I can't remember if it's behind the music or whatever. It was in the 90s, I think. And I think it's on VH1. And they asked Malcolm, they said, when you guys make a record, you get, people, always critics or whatever, paying you for making the same record over and over again. And Malcolm's response was in that typical swaggery, broken voice. He's like, yeah, we make the same record and it kicks ass every single time.
He's definitely not wrong.
And it's like, when you own your lane, it's that's the thing that's really attractive. It's in a sea of, I don't want to sound like soapbox, so I'm going to make this short, but like in the sea of the Instagram greatness, and there's everybody's great everywhere and everybody can play everybody else's stuff. And like the arms race is over essentially as far as playing,
right.
Like there's an unborn fetus in Japan that's probably playing for the love of God. Right.
Right.
It's
exactly.
Like, everybody's great everywhere. And the thing that it's interesting is like, there's not a lot of people owning their lane. Everybody's just doing things to kind of prove that they can. It's like you'll see it in waves of like, all of a sudden, like neo soul stuff got real popular, and all of a sudden this, and then it's like these waves of like, hey, me too. I can do that too. I can do that too. It's like, man, all of our favorite players weren't Me Too guys.
Right, they're the first
all of our favorite players were like, hey, I'm Steve Vai. I'm just gonna make Steve Vai music.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting because it becomes, like you said, the arms race is over. That's a good way to put it, because you see these, 8-year-old kids playing stuff, and of course not knocking the kids, but similar people that do that. It's kind of like, okay, that's good, but what are you creating? What are you adding to the community? That doesn't really apply to the kids. I understand they're just kids, but to the people that are in their 20s and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a great Joe Bonamassa statement that I love. He said this to me when I got to meet him one time. His bass guitar tech for me when I was out with an artist. And so I got to meet Joe and check out all his crazy gear and everything. And Joe said, he's like, man, the thing that I'm looking for when I like guitar players is like, what's your statement?
Yeah.
Like, what's your statement? And that always stuck with me. And that stuck with me really hardcore when I was making Junktown. There's a lot more intense pyrotechnic stuff that got chopped off that laying on the editing room floor because it wasn't a statement. It didn't make anything better. It was just like, hey, I can do this trick. I didn't want to make a record that was about that. I wanted to make a record that, like, even though it's instrumental guitar music, there was like melodies that you can hum.
Absolutely.
And like, it was important for me to know, if you're a non-guitarist, to know when the guitar solo starts, even though the whole song's a guitar solo.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%, dude. And that's actually perfectly segues into another question I wanted to ask you, which was kind of talking about your approach to writing instrumental music.
As anyone would tell you, it evolves from record to record. I guess it's the most familiar talking about the writing process of Junktown because it's so fresh, but I can... the writing process for Truth and Lie was very different because it was such a big album. I think the way I was able to make Junktown the way it is because I laid that groundwork with Truth and Lie. Truth and Lie was like, it was my statement to the world that, like, I'm a bluegrass guy and I love acoustic music. Here's 10, 11 songs of the stuff that I like. There's singers, there's songwriters, it's like all kinds. And then I'm also an electric guitar player, and here's 10 or 11. It's a double album, and the title track was on the acoustic side as a mandolin song, and is the same song on the electric side as a fusion song, and kind of a modal kind of thing. And anyways, so after making that record, it had 23 songs on it, and it was just so polar opposite from each disc, and that allowed me to make a record, a follow-up like Junktown, which is laser focused.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the mash of all the things that I love, but it's 10 instrumental guitar songs but there's banjo on it. There's pedal steel on it. You know, it's like I never wanted to like lose that Southern accent, even though I'm playing music that's not really, you know, typically Southern. Like there's a thing that Ben Eller, who engineered the record, and he's a great guitar player in his own right. He played bass on the record. He and I and some of the musicians, as we were working, you know, was tossing around ideas for the record. We had this thing about like a lot of time. I'm trying to be very tactful how I say this. Give me a second to like word it right. It's like a lot of times when guys that are maybe shred guys or jazz guys or fusion guys or whatever, a lot of times when somebody is like specifically maybe a rocker or a metal guy, like they do country, it comes across like it's always got to be a corny joke, you know, bam, bam, go, bam, bam, it's like
right.
kind of corny, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like, it was important to me to make a record that had a Southern accent, but it wasn't corny and it wasn't hokey. It's like, this is a pedal steel, but this is not in the context that you're going to hear other than the song Smoke Wagon. Like the other stuff that you hear steel and banjo on, that's not typical conducive for those instruments, you know? And I thought it was really important to like what I consider this record's sound, and the statement that I want to make with this record was like, is kind of blending that and forging that stuff together and finding a vibe that kind of gave me a lane to live in a sea of instrumental guitarists, you know?
Yeah.
That was like the main goal. So like, as far as like the analytical, statistical side of making a record, I started that record with 50 something demos and I hacked everything down to 10 songs.
Nice. That's tough.
Yeah. 10 songs that like seemed like they told a story together. Seemed like that was where like the title Junktown came from. It's like, man, the songs don't sound alike, but I feel like they live in the same world, you know?
Yeah. That's cool, man.
So, you know, and then it was the first record I ever cut at home. Like I made the whole record at my house. So that was really fun too.
Cool. So it's interesting. So you're saying that the record before, you having all the different genres and different instruments and different stuff that was kind of, you know, even the two discs being so different from each other allowed you to make the next record, which had it all in there and your own sound even more like.
Yeah, because
I
on
like
the Truth in Line record, it was like the acoustic stuff and the acoustic instruments and the things that were acoustic lived on one record.
Right.
Like there wasn't banjo on the electric side.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So it wasn't shocking when people heard Junktown and heard it all together and it was, you know, it sounded like you. That's awesome.
It's that natural evolution. Yeah. So I feel like I'm trying to slowly but surely find my lane.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quote Ben again. I'm trying desperately not to bring sand to the beach. You know, as far as
right.
So as far as guitar players, it's like if someone likes the content, they like the album, I love that. That makes me feel great. And if someone doesn't like it, you know, go find somebody that you do like.
There
you know,
go. Yeah.
and having that individuality to me is more important than all of the reharmonizations or all of the chops or all of the slaps and taps and tricks and all the things that's all just icing, really, to me. Like when I get on Instagram, I see a ton of icing. It's like, I want to go to somebody's bio and be like, hey man, what's your songs? Like, what's your album statement? And like mad props to the guys that I respect and the guys that I look up to in the game. Mark Lettieri is one of them. Like Spark and Echo is a fabulous record. Fabulous, you know? And like, he comes out of the gate with a song that stays in your head and it's hooky and it's just like, and he's a modern guy. It's like, there's modern guys doing it, you know? It's just, I worry a lot of times that Instagram and social media is all about people chasing likes. And that needs to be secondary to like people making content, making statements.
Yeah,
you know,
because it takes a while, and that evolution you're talking about to find your own lane and to, you know, really forge ahead and make new.
And that's purely artistic speaking. That's not
definitely.
like career wise. Like there's guys like that have incredible careers that are maybe tuitional or transcriptions or sideman or whatever. I'm not devaluing any of that stuff. I just feel like the question you ask is focused on you know, the artsy fartsy side of it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely,
definitely what we're going for. So
you mentioned Sideman. You've played the role of Sideman before.
I have played the role of Sideman many times.
Who were some of those acts?
Man, I did my first tour ever. I think I was about 22 or 3 maybe, and it was with a metal band called Disciple. That's like the first time I ever got to do a big boy gig.
Okay.
But then from there, you know, life happens. And then I played with Sebastian Bach on a short run just to sub out. And then that turned into like meeting other people. And then I was out with Scott Stapp on his Proof of Life tour after he and Creed split ways and they were doing Alter Bridge or whatever. So I was the MD on that gig. And then, you know, that transitioned into Rascal Flatts, obviously being growing up with Telecasters and acoustics and stuff, I got that gig because of the utility thing. I think I played bouzouki and mandolin and acoustic and all kinds of different things in that. And then I went out with Low Cash, which is country, pop country kind of thing. And then Gary Allen, and just can't keep a job, I guess.
We had somebody on a podcast for Low Cash, Harry Myrie. Do you know Harry?
Harry is the drummer, right?
Yeah.
So Harry and I only got to work together very shortly. We like our overlap in the group. We only got to do a few days, but I still talk to Harry and I love him. He's a great guy.
Harry's a really good friend of the show. We've had him on several times. Yeah, we love him, but he did the Low Cash thing too, and that made me, when I saw that you did that, I was wondering if you guys had crossed paths.
We did. We got to do a little, living on the rolling submarine together.
So Low Cash had a number one, didn't they?
That was when I was with them. I had no relationship to that number one. Let me clarify. But that was during my tenure, and we, that's a very fun time to be with a new artist is when they're just firing on.
Right. Yeah. So how is that? I mean, when you're out there, playing to big crowds that are really digging what you're doing. I mean, what is that like? How are you feeling on stage?
I mean, like for me, it's just, I'm just trying to play guitar as best as possible. Just some gigs, we had amps on stage. Some gigs had Axe effects, and we weren't, because of production, there were no amps on stage. And I'm really always trying to be concerned with the tones and the sound, and like making sure that, on some of those Low Cash records, there's walls of guitars. And it's like, I know if, let's say a track rig goes out and those secondary guitars aren't there, if I can just mutate what I'm playing and not be so, be pliable, to fit the situation, because in live, anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and being able to navigate that, especially in that band's very guitar centric. It's like when you have anything that comes off the rails or whatever, it's just making sure that you don't allow it to come off the rails. So the crowd stuff's great. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not. The parties are great, and seeing the sights and all that stuff's really great. But first and foremost, I just want to make sure that like I'm delivering what I'm getting a paycheck to deliver. That's primo. Yeah. That's primo. And and that was fun because they wanted me to do my personality, and they wanted me to bring some of what I do to that, and they didn't want me to just quote the albums,
right?
And so that's
that makes it fun. Yeah, that makes it more fun.
Yeah, when you get an artist that's just like, yeah, man, make it you.
Cool.
So yeah.
So when you sit down to learn a set because you're about to go out and play with Low Cash or Scott Stapp or whoever, what is your approach to quickly and efficiently learn 10, 20, 30 songs?
There's not, because you'll sit down and blast yourself through the gig and then get to the gig, and a lot of the things are different than unless you get stems of a live show and exactly what the previous guy played. You can't really go into a gig these days because production and everybody's putting a million guitars on a song. It's like you'll sit down and learn what you think might be the part, and the artist may want a different part. So with all the preparation, it's always just being aware that something's not going to be what you learned. With that said, listen to the music and try to capture the vibe. I feel like that's the most important thing, because every hired gun in the world, and everybody that's trying to get a hired gun job can play the stuff. But the thing that you need to be able to do is deliver the vibe. And I think that's capturing the lightning in the bottle that gives, guys like the guys that I look up to, like Sean Tubbs or whoever, that gives those guys the edge. Gives them the one up thing. Is like, not only are they playing stuff, they're also maybe playing something that's theirs, but it's in the right vibe and it's in the right lane.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah. So a minute ago, you mentioned you were the MD for the Scott Stapp thing. Can you talk a little bit about what that means in addition to kind of your guitar playing duties? What extra stuff you have to do?
Man, it's just keeping the peace between everybody and making sure that the artist is getting what you want. It's never cool for an artist to get on a bus and yell at the band for whatever that may be getting bad to them. And I'm not saying that Scott ever yelled. I'm just saying in general, nobody wants to be the bad guy when you're cutting people's paychecks.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the MD's the go between, where it's like, I'm definitely not going to give any specific examples. I'm just saying, like, if the artist didn't want whatever drum fill was happening in this song or whatever beat was happening here, they don't go to the drummer and just be like, hey man, you're playing this wrong. You just tell the MD, and the MD can, be the go between.
Right.
That's what a lot of it means to me, because now there's other gigs where it's like, man, I was lucky enough to work with Jim Riley, who's one of the finest band leaders in the game. And that guy can just chart anything in 30 seconds. And it's just, he has a completely different skill set because it's a completely different gig. I mean, I think every gig has a different need. Or some gigs you don't even really need an MD. It's just somebody on stage is going to be called the MD just because that's the way it goes. You know, it's like some gigs, the bands are so self-sufficient that it's just not needed.
Right.
And that's what you see with like really high caliber players. And that's the kind of guys I love to just be around and learn from and follow on Facebook. And, you know, like it was one of the coolest moments of my life. I looked up to Tim Pierce for my whole life. I love session players. I love Dan Huff and Landau and all these guys.
Yeah, Dan Huff's killer.
I got to meet Tim while we were out in California doing the NAMM thing. And it was one of those like, wow, this is real life, man. I'm hanging out with Tim Pierce and listening to tell stories. And, I mean, if you're familiar with Tim, you know that like he could straight up wallpaper a house with his pedigree, you know? It's like he's played on everything. So it was cool just to be like, hey, man, what did you use on this one song that sounds so good, you know?
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, yeah, it's just Tim Pierce, and he can pick up whatever guitar in whatever rack and make it sound awesome. You know, it's just the way that guy plays.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the hard truths you have to realize is tone starts in the hands.
It is, man. It's like, boy, you know, it's like you could hand Brent Mason a Les Paul, and he put it on the back pickup, and it's going to sound like Brent Mason. You know, it's like the telly thing and the gear thing always helps, but I've watched that guy use a twin, a deluxe, a Gibson amp, a super. Like every time he plays at Nashville, I go see him, and it's just like it's always Brent. You know, it sounds awesome. It's like owning that lane. Yeah, and you look at what guys. Same way with Vi or whoever we were talking about earlier. Vi's changed his rig a ton of times, and it always just sounds like Vi. And
Vi,
that's what
when I saw Vi, he told a story of meeting and hanging out with Brian May, and Brian May picked up Vi's guitar through Vi's equipment, and Steve was like, "Oh, this will be cool." And he was disappointed to find out that he just sounded exactly like Brian May.
Yeah. We all want that button or that magic pedal and that magic piece of gear, you know, but it's like you realize that an amplifier literally just does that. It makes you louder. You know?
Yeah. That's an interesting part. So what are some of your rig preferences? I mean, if you had your preference, and I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I have some favorite amps. I've got a beautiful 1963 Deluxe Reverb that I paid way too much for, but it's awesome, and I have had it for 15 years, 18 years. And I've recently fallen in love with the Sir Hedgehog. It's like a 50 watt kind of dumbly kind of thing. And I'm just running on the clean channel with pedals in front. One of my Desert Island amps is a Diesel Herbert.
Nice.
160 watts. It's a monster. Great for heavy chugging stuff. But man, a lot of really great production tones live in that channel too with the minus switch down. I've got a Rhodes Colossus. I guess it's called KSR now.
Yeah, that was awesome. I remember the Colossus. I have a Kemper profile of the Colossus that I love.
It's great. And then I've got some of the Synergy amp stuff that I really love too. And when it comes to recording, I've got an Axe X3, and my favorite purchase this past year was a Universal Audio Aux. That's my favorite piece of gear I've bought recently. And then a slew of pedals and things. Like I always seem to gravitate towards the Carl Martin compressor.
Yeah, people love that one.
I love the Koji that Sir makes, and then I've recently really loving the Wampler guys and what Brian makes. Brian makes great stuff. Yeah, the Pinnacle and the Tumnus are on my board, and I got this thing from Electronics called a B9, the organ pedal, and it's just silly fun. You can turn on, pretend you're gospel organ player.
Nice.
That's funny. So what guitars are you running? You mostly running your Sir Signature?
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing, right? It's like they're like, hey, make what you want. So I did, and now I just play those.
That's beautiful too. That's awesome.
That's what I want. With that said, things that aren't obvious with my name on it. I really love the moderns. They're just good, great, versatile weapons. I've got a beautiful, really old PRS 24 fret PRS. That's great. I've got one of the Sir Classic Antiques that's got the nitro finish. Ooh. So it's as close to it. It was really cool to have the Eric Johnson Strat and compare it to the Sir and just see how close that he could get that vintage thing. And dude, it's scary. That said, I've got a Collings. they're gonna hate me. I think it's called the I-35. It's the 335 like replica copy thing.
That's awesome.
And it is incredible. It just. A lot of Gibson scale length guitars have tuning issues. Shocker.
What do you mean?
That's really, What do you mean it doesn't intonate perfectly? So this one has great intonation. Some of those things that are a little unforgiving in the studio. it does really well. It tracks well. And I've been using it live with the Kennedy Wood Band, which is a new musical project we got coming out. So,
do you ever mess with those Evertune bridges?
Yeah, I messed with it once and I put it right back down.
I've never tried one.
That thing does not sound right to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely not a diss to the science and the engineering that makes it. I think those guys are great. And I know players and friends of mine that swear by them, like Andy James loves it.
Yeah, Andy James loves his. And the people I've seen that really like it seem to all kind of skew towards the metal genre. So that makes me wonder.
Yeah, because the tonality of it in the guitar, you know, a lot of guys are using active pickups, you know, and that's a thing. Andy's a really close friend, and we rib each other whenever we can. And you know, the Evertune thing is cool that it's always in tune. That is cool, but I'll take something that's a little imperfect that I can work around to have the tone that really is the tone that I like.
Yeah.
And feel too. You know, it's like feel is such a thing. It's like you can't pick up a telly and it not have an ashtray and brass saddles and it sound right. It's just not. It's not going to be that thing.
Right.
So you know, with that said, we got real dorky with me and John and the team at SIR to develop the bridge that we have on the models that I play, and I love it. And then on the one that's got the trim, it's that Godo 510. I love that. So you know, it's just kind of getting the right tool for the job. You know.
Yeah. So, speaking about endorsements, what is some advice you'd give to musicians who may be ready to start pursuing endorsements of their own to kind of lock in some deals?
Don't. And I don't mean that disrespectfully or snarky. I mean, I play genuinely what I love. If John SIR and I got in a huge fight tomorrow, I'd be like, I hate that guy, but he builds great guitars. I guess I'm going to have to keep playing his guitar. You know, it's like,
yeah,
play what you want and then let life take care of the rest.
Right. That's what
because
we
the
usually
most
say.
important thing is, and I'll say this, the most important thing is remembering, and this is going to sound way egotistical or narcissistic or whatever, and it's not meant to. This is honest to God advice. The artist is not validated by the company that endorses them. And I see a lot of that on the internet these days where it's like, oh, proudly use blah, blah, blah. It's like that company is validated by the music you make with their tools.
Right.
The term endorsement, like the company shouldn't endorse you. You endorse the company.
Right. Exactly.
And I think when you go out trying to get free gear and there are, you know, some rotten eggs in the game that just jump from company to company, just trying to get free gears and paychecks. Like that's never been my thing. I always played what I liked and let life take care of itself. And, you know, I built a relationship with SIR over the past 11 years. I bought my first SIR. It wasn't like, you know, and then I grew as a player and I grew, you know, and gigs got real big and, you know, it's like, there's some gigs where you're like, oh man, can I get a white guitar and play with Christina Aguilera tonight? You know, it's like, there's some of those that happen. It's like that was awesome to grow and them have faith in me early on, you know? And then now as like a more, you know, I guess, I don't know, but like more professional player or whatever. It's like that relationship's built out of faith in the product. It's not built out of, hey man, what can you give me?
Right.
You know, and I think that's the most important thing. And also just man, if you like the values of a company matter to me. Like I want to know if something breaks that I can get it replaced quick. You know, it's like gotta keep chugging, you know.
Sure.
It's like if this hedgehog blew up while I was making that record. I use this hedgehog on like 60% of the record, 80% probably. And it's like if it blew up, I would be like, I'm tracking tomorrow. This amp is coming back to you. I need another one. Send it. You know, it's like, and you know, you want to work with a company that understands your needs. And if you're a young cat and you don't have big gigs and you're starting to make your own music, you know, just go buy what you want. And then hopefully your art will put you on the radar because people will be asking what you used, you know, because they like the art. The art and the song is the most important. I sound like so cheesy saying that because I keep coming back to it in almost every answer you ask me. But it's like that's what matters.
Yeah, it all does come back to the art, and yeah, that's what we've talked to, you know, tons of people now, and everybody kind of says that same thing, and we recommend that to everybody. You know, that's the way you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you could. That's not to say that someone can't go chase down and get free gear, and I mean, I just think that's the wrong way to do it.
That's a lot of work. It's more work than you need it to be. Like just
it's more
like
work,
you said, endorse the company.
And what does it do? Like, what does it do for you? You got a free piece of gear. It's like, it doesn't make your art any better.
Right.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it all comes back to
it all comes back to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Eddie Van Halen blew up the world, however many years ago, it's in 1978 with a piece of crap guitar.
Yeah. Frankenstrat.
Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. It's like, don't matter. And now everybody plays humbuckers and strats.
Right. And they sell that reissue guitar too, that like hodgepodge.
For way too much money.
Yeah, way too much money. But
it's like $25,000, right? Like 20
yeah.
grand, 25
a lot
grand.
of money.
That's the one where they like simulated the cigarette burns
all
and stuff.
Of it, yeah,
like,
and then they make a very limited run. Yeah.
They chased down records that were like the quarters. I don't know how they found the quarters that were all the same year. You know what I mean?
That's
like he
nuts.
holds the bridge in place with whatever year quarter it was, like a 1972 or whatever.
I had to collect them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they're just like, I guess we need a bunch of 1972 quarters.
Everybody check your ashtrays.
Yeah.
That's nuts. One thing I wanted to ask is, what do your practice habits and routines kind of look like nowadays versus what they may have looked like when you were coming up?
Pretty similar, really. Like I just sit down and learn stuff that I want to learn. And if I have a gig coming up, that's the only thing that's really different. Used to, I'd just sit in a room for 5 or 6 hours and be like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to practice. I just learn everything I could. Now I'll work towards a gig. Like if I've got a rock gig coming up, I'll work on that material. But like in general, when I sit down to practice for myself, like today, I just was learning some fiddle lines just because they sounded cool. I that's where I practice the most because it's not practice at that point.
Right.
I'm just having fun playing the guitar, And these days I play and I write mostly on mandolin. Like Forgotten Secrets was written on mandolin, and that just came from like sitting on my couch noodling.
That's cool.
So I try not to look at it like metronomic Hail Mary style. Punishing myself, with rudiments.
What's it like taking a mandolin song, something you wrote on mandolin, and moving it to guitar? Do you find that to be an easy transition?
No, it's usually the fingerings are really
a little weird,
messed up. Yeah, like Truth and Lie is so nice and fluid on mandolin, and on electric guitar or guitar in general, it's just a nightmare to play that head because it's 4 notes with one note per string, 4 strings. 1 note per string, and you have to cross pick it, and that's on mandolin. It's just like you have that huge reach, and the scale length is so small, and the tuning intervals are wider, so you can jump more ground. Whereas like the thing that sneaks into my playing a lot of times is those mandolin lines because it's just that's still my main instrument in my mind.
Yeah, but I bet that pushes you on the electric guitar, to come up with stuff that most electric guitar players wouldn't play. So that's really cool.
Hopefully,
that's very cool.
I mean, like that's like I said, like Truth and Lie was written on mandolin. Forgotten Secrets was written on mandolin. Beyond the Reef was written on mandolin. So yeah, it's like
very
a lot
cool.
of stuff.
It's kind of like Yngwie and Paganini.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
learning violin stuff. So you mentioned you have the Axe 3. Have you ever messed with the Kemper or anything similar, other than the Axe?
I have. A gentleman's answer would be I have the Axe 3.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, we're big Kemper fans here. How's
Ben likes the Kemper. The Kemper thing, I'm going to be very honest on. I don't want to sound snooty or anything, but I think where I don't like Kemper personally is if you bring up a profile, it's awesome. It's a photograph and it sounds great. But the moment I go to adjust something, like let's say I've got a Marshall profile, the moment I go to pull back the gain, it instantly doesn't sound like the amp or anything. It's like it broke the profile. And it sounds weird and gets a little, gosh, I don't know, like square wavy or something. I don't know. Something gets weird. If you got a whole ton of profiles and you don't touch them, that's killer. I think that's a great technology. But I like a more organic flexibility. Like when I can pull up like an amp on the Axe FX or even the Line 6 stuff. If I turn back the treble, it still sounds like I turned back the treble on the amp. And it doesn't sound like I'm,
That's fair.
Yeah. So I think the Kemper stuff's great. I just think because of that functionality, it's not going to be in my workflow. Yeah. I also think that not having an online software editor, like an online editor thing, like the Axe Edit stuff, like how do you not have that? You guys are obviously brilliant, genius dudes over at Kemper. Like, get that software editor up to snuff. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because they have the rig
here
exchange.
I am, just an armchair warrior trying to trying to talk about how I know how to make it. I don't know what I make, but let's all just take that with a grain of salt.
You know what though? You're probably right though, because they do separate Kemper profiles by gain stages. Like a lot of times they'll break a 1969 Plexi Marshall if they're taking something like that. They'll break it into gain stages, and you'll have it at gain 1, at gain 2, gain 3. And that is, so you're not making big jumps when you are making little tweaks to your profiles. So, but yeah, you're probably right. You probably just want to dial in the profile you want or the sound you want profile, and then don't mess with it.
I think where the Kemper is really strong is, capturing some studio tones, throwing them in the Kemper, and then going on the road with a backpack.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I would use that. With that said, Kemper they're a little late to the game on the floorboard thing. Like with low cash, we weren't allowed to use amps on several runs for quite a long time. And the Fractal Axe 8, you don't have to have a head controller and a foot controller. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just all in the Axe 8. And line 6 now is on the cutting edge with the Helix. The littlest one.
Yeah, that little tiny one is like $400 too.
Dude, that is killer because you can put that in your gig bag and you can take your amp, and if your amp blows up, it's like, well, I can still get through the gig. No problem. I don't have to bring it back up.
You can almost put that thing in your pocket.
It's great, man.
Super affordable.
I think that's really cool. And it's super affordable. Yeah. So
yeah, it's almost like you almost have to have something like that in case something goes wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, but with that said, I mean, I like Ben gets great tones with the Kemper, and I love Jimmy Olander's tones are great with Kemper, but like these guys are like taking snapshots of the gear, and I think that's where the unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, I think the aux is the best thing on the market, just for me, my opinion, the UA aux, but it's only cool if you have like 7 amps because it's not an amp profiler. You know what I mean? It's just only the back end. So you still have to have a horde of amps. And at that point it becomes super not, functioning for a new guitar player or a guy that's working out of his bedroom or something,
Yeah. That's a good point. Hey, one of the things we want to talk to you about, because you have some experience in this, is the guitar tournament type world, basically. We've never talked to anybody that we've known to win guitar tournaments and whatnot. So could you tell us about your time on Guitar Center's tournament?
What they call it, Guitarmageddon?
Yeah, is that what it was?
Yeah, I was a kid, man. I think I entered that thing when I was 21 on a joke.
That's so funny.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, as a kid, my granddad would take us to these bluegrass festivals, and these, we would do these picking things at like various state festivals. You win some, you lose some, whatever. My buddies, we were all at Guitar Center, and my buddies were like going out one night, and I had to buy some strings, and I sat down to try something, and guy was like, "Dude, you should enter Guitarmageddon." And I was like, "I'm not entering Guitarmageddon. That sounds crazy. That's not. I don't want to do competition. That's not like that, And my buddies were like, "Hey, man, if you'll enter the contest, we'll just cover your tab tonight." And I was like, "Okay, I'm entering." I entered as a joke, and then I won that round and won the next round. Then I went to the region, and by that point, I didn't care what happened because I was getting a free trip to Disney World. My region was the Southeast, so the competition was at House of Blues down there. And I won that. And then I went to Vegas and won. I mean, it's like 3,400 people. Like, with that said, I think when I was in Vegas with the finalists, it could have went 6 other ways. Like, everybody was great. Like,
Sure.
That's where it got kind of not okay to me, where it was like, everybody's great. Like,
it's so subjective. It's so subjective to be a judging a guitar competition, because there's so many different things that you can look at, and it just depends on the panel of people.
It almost comes down to like, do I like this?
Exactly.
Better,
It's literally just what's calling my name or whatever, So it's so subjective, but it is so cool to have the validation.
It was awesome because, like, man, I got to meet Cheap Trick and like play a song with them, and then I got to. I mean, it's like all this stuff that was happening that night was so cool, and then. The coolest part of it all, I got to give back to my granddad. One of the prizes was a $10,000 cash prize or whatever. So I just bought my granddad a D45. I just spent all 10 grand on it, and I just gave it to him. Yeah, it was like the coolest thing ever. So that had that's the highlight for me.
That's so cool, man.
Like, yeah, as far as like just like glow. I've never been, and when I won that, I was like, I'm out. No more competitions, no Instagram battles. Like,
it's not really for the artistic type, really. Like, competition's not like what it's all about. So, but it is cool that you got in on it, as a joke and it all. And I love that you gave that guitar to your granddad. That's so cool.
Yeah, the things that made it cool wasn't necessarily like the, hey, I'm a good guitar player. You know, it's like that stuff's
No, but I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure.
So
And I was a kid. All that stuff's super fun when you're 21, 22. You're
yeah.
going to Vegas.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
it's like I'm 21. I'm in Vegas. It's awesome.
Yeah,
you know?
for
totally.
sure.
So that stuff was fun.
the only time I've been to Vegas, I was 7. So
No,
Not much fun for a 7-year-old.
yeah, very different.
We did a residency with Flats out there. I was out there for 30 days straight.
Jeez.
I bet that was fun.
You just remember it's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right. That's right. Pace yourself.
That's funny. What's one of the biggest mistakes you see guitar players make in your mind?
Just maybe not really trying to spend time to figure out what they want to say. Maybe just like they're just trying to like find out what's hot and see if they can do what's hot. You know,
Right.
like not. I guess really just not really cultivating your own uniqueness and like polishing that.
Yeah, the carving your own lane thing type thing, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, who am I? You know, I was like, I don't know.
No, but you're right though. That is probably one of the things that people need to waken up to a little bit. Guitar players.
Mm-hmm. So another question I love asking is, how do you stay creative and inspired?
Man, I play a lot of video games.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I play a lot of video games.
What have you been playing lately?
Destiny. I'm a hardcore Destiny player. I love PvP in Destiny, and I'm interested in Apex Legends. It just came out like a couple of days ago, and it was Respawn's new IP, and they did like 10 million players on the second day or something. Yeah, it was crazy. I play a lot of Overwatch, or I did.
Okay, so you like that PvP like kind of stuff?
Yeah, man, that's where I can just kind of be competitive. And
you ever play Battlefront?
I did, yeah. I played the new one quite a bit, and then I kind of the end game loop on it wasn't really for me as far as like there wasn't a lot of variance. It's like everybody used the same stuff at the top levels, and I don't like that. I like to think that the sniper versus shotgun while this other guy's got an SMG. Like I like that.
Yeah.
I like fighters. I'm excited about the new Mortal Kombat coming out. I'm racing games. I love the Forza Horizon series. I think those are beautiful. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that stuff triggering those other dopamine drips or whatever you want to call it, like that helps me be creative when I go to pick up the guitar.
Definitely, and it's also like a escape from guitar a little bit. When you go back to it, you appreciate it a little bit. You know, just get your mind off it a little bit. You can't just play guitar all the time.
Yeah, and two, like on every record I've ever done, there is a song that is dedicated to a video game.
Oh.
And usually there's like a moment in a video game where it sparks some inspiration to write. On my first record, there was a song called Emergence Day after the Gears of War franchise.
Nice.
The second record was Reach after Halo Reach. And the new record is Beyond the Reef, and that was for Destiny.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Have you ever disclosed that before? Is that something that people know?
I actually am friends with the Sandbox. I don't want to say friends. I'm an acquaintance with the Sandbox lead at Bungie.
Nice.
Josh
Very
Kemper.
Cool.
And he's a music fan. I think his family and stuff like into you know I think they had a mom and pop store or something. And I sent it to Josh privately on Twitter. I was like, hey man, this is for you guys. You guys are a big influence on me, and
awesome.
You know, this is the art. This is what came out of what you gave me. You know.
That's awesome.
And what was their response to it?
He's just like, oh man, that's so cool. You know, it's like,
awesome.
It's like, what do you say? You know,
Yeah, awesome. That's great though. I definitely have written some songs about movies and stuff that inspire me, so I totally know where that comes from. That's cool.
Yeah, it's so that's I don't really like veg out on like tons of TV, like so. That's kind of not in my diet on the day to day.
Right.
It's either music or video games.
Yeah, me, it's like cult classic movies. Like if I'm going to write a song about a movie, it's not going to be about Transformers or anything. It's going to be like something like super old or something like, I don't know.
Now I love movies. I just don't do a lot of like the Netflix series watching stuff, you know, just.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's a time suck for sure. So, advice. I want to ask you, what's maybe one big piece of advice you would give to independent musicians, up and comers, on the artistic side, which we've kind of been touching on, but also maybe on the business side?
Okay, I'm going to use the same answer that I've been using all night, which is focus on yourself. What makes you you? Because again, everybody's great now. Being a great guitar player, really, it's not like 1984. You know, where like great guitar players were just happening, and you're just like, holy cow, who's this? You know, Alan Holdsworth guy or whatever. It's like, to me, it's like now it's more important to be unique than it is to be able to do 14 parts at the same time while you stand on one leg and write it.
Right. There's a lot of that on YouTube nowadays.
Everybody's great. So like now what?
Yeah.
As far as like the business side, just be aware of your own integrity. You can't buy that. And that will come back to help you in the long run. It's helped me before in the long run and the business world. It's just maintain your integrity.
Making music for the love of music. Yeah.
And also maintain your business integrity and your business ethics.
Right.
You know, it's like there's a great quote. It's like if you're not getting turned down twice a year because you're too expensive, you need to up your rate.
That's
like knowing your value of what you do. And
Yeah.
I think that's a problem that has led to the devalue of music and live music. You know, a club wants to pay a cover band $700, $800. It's like, that sucks. How did we get there? How did that happen?
Somebody did it.
How it happened. Everybody kept undercutting each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's like on Broadway in Nashville, you go out there and work 3 hours and make, $60 in tips. It's because everybody kept undercutting each other. If we would all just pull together and be like, all right, live music now is worth $400 a person minimum for a live band. If you just said that and everybody stuck to it, people would have to pay it because it's the value of the art. And I think undercutting your fellow musician is like cutting your nose off to spite your face,
Yeah. And you need to, like you said, you need to kind of say no to things that like you don't say 400 a person and then they say we can do 300 and you go, okay, that doesn't work.
You say, well, cool. Let me know if your budget changes. It's like, it's just being aware of what you're doing and knowing that like, there's not a lot of people that can make music and there's not a lot of Vinnie Colaiutas in the world. There's not a lot of, it's like keep the value on that stuff really high. And I'm happy to see the Music Modernization Act is at least making some kind of movement to help that monetization of the Spotify's and the Pandoras, because let's be honest, it's not for the Metallicas and the Led Zeppelins or whoever. It's for the next round. Like there's a staggering number. There's a staggering statistic that's with Spotify right now. And I'm on Spotify. I'm on all that stuff. I have subscription to it, whatever. But the statistic is that to hit minimum wage, you have to have 1.4 some odd million streams a month to hit minimum wage. That's not right, you know? And then people will spend $8 on a unicorn decorated cup of coffee at Starbucks. It's like, let's keep the value of music up. And I don't think that happens with like undercutting your fellow musicians. So that's my business advice. Keep the value up on what we do.
Well said.
Love it. So last couple things here. Where can our audience find you online and reach out if they want and say hey or whatever?
Man, Instagram, Andy Wood Music. Twitter is A Wood Shreds. With a confession, most of my Twitter is mostly video games and cars and sports and stuff. So if you want to talk to me about that stuff, get on that Twitter. If you want the music stuff, I say go to the source and get albums, your iTunes, your Spotify, your Pandora. That's the stuff that matters to me the most. Yeah. If you want to reach out and talk to me, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, I try to sit every night and just answer people's emails. Like I'm amazed that anybody wants to talk to me because I'm a dork. If anybody wants to talk,
man, you're inspirational. That's that.
So you said we talked a week or so ago, and you mentioned you were a football fan, and the Super Bowl was coming up, and you said you were rooting for the Rams, right?
No, that's incorrect. I knew the Patriots would win. I love that coach for the Rams, but I'm a Bears fan. So when we spoke, the Bears still is before the miffed kick. So the Bears still had a chance. I think that may have been when we first started talking.
That was
the whole conversation was like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and I was just like, I don't think the Patriots are going to lose, but I love that coach for the Rams. I think he's awesome.
that game was not fun.
I said it was like one of the most boring ones, man.
The final score was 10-3 or something.
In my opinion, the Super Bowl was the Chiefs and the Patriots game. Yeah. That was the most exciting game.
The championship game. Yeah,
that's a good one.
That was the one. Yep. I honestly thought that the Bears were a little more cut out to deal with the Tom Gronk thing. I feel like they had a stronger defense. The Bears defense this year was like Khalil Mack and the pass rush was vicious this year.
Have you always been a Bears fan? Are you from Chicago?
No, I'm not from Chicago. I'm just a child of the 80s, man. And Super Bowl shuffle. Right? Yeah, it's like those are my dudes, and I've been with them through the stretch.
Yeah, I adopted the Vikings just because my best friend's family's all from Minnesota. So I mean, I'm not a huge NFL fan, but the Vikings is my team when it has to be.
Well, in the South, it's like there's like SEC football is such a thing. So I mean, I look at the SEC just like that's the NFL.
Yeah, sure.
Let's be honest.
And I graduated University of South Carolina, so I mean, I know that world pretty well.
I love it. I've played down there a lot, and I love the Columbia scene, And anyways, like the SEC thing's really amazing because if you play on the offense for Alabama, you're going the first round. Like that's just like
true. And now Clemson too, which is exciting.
Round, and it's exciting to watch those kids like make that transition and get into the NFL. And
for sure. And it's really cool to see Clemson do well because I grew up going to those games, and I mean when they were not good, I've been a Clemson fan forever. Even when I was at USC, I was still a Clemson fan, and it's really cool to see them kind of do well.
I like them too. Yeah, I like them too. I like seeing Alvin Kamara have a great year at New Orleans this year. That was exciting because he's a former Vol. It's like anytime somebody like UT Vol goes to the NFL. I mean, like. Patterson for the Patriots, he got his win. It's like I like that. I like seeing guys that wore orange, getting some big stats in the NFL. That's fun.
It's cool to talk to another Southeastern dude. We don't get too many of them. Everyone's from LA,
right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we're like football. They're like, nah, whatever.
Basketball.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to ask you was, what can we expect from you in the future? I mean, where are you taking this?
I don't know. I have no idea.
He's open for the whole thing. Yeah.
Honestly, like for me, I'm looking to do as much stuff with my the full band, what I consider my full show, which is like I like to bring a fiddle player and a banjo player. Like I did that in LA, and like that's the kind of thing I'm really into. Like live is making sure that I'm reproducing the show as I see it in my head. Now I want to do as much touring with that as possible. That's like the immediate thing is to get out and promote the record. So, I'd love to get to everybody's cities and play some shows and make some music,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, if you're in Charlotte, we're coming. So
yeah. Oh, for sure.
Awesome.
Book a stop.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You're not too far. Well, Andy, man, thanks again so much for the time. This has been awesome. You've had some amazing answers to some questions that we ask most of our guests. And I feel like you gave some really, really good answers.
Yeah, unique too, so that's good.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Cool, man. Well, let's stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
That sounds great.
All right, man. See ya.